Howdy, howdy, folks. Welcome to Moose Podcast number 315. I trust you are all doing great. I had a marvelous last week. That's kind of the impetus for this week's podcast. I'll get into that in a moment. Remember, though, it's fall time. It's time to get out there. You got gorgeous light, gorgeous colors, little pockets here and there. No matter if you're out there for just a morning or you get to spend a whole weekend or the good fortune of a whole week, make that fall color count. A little underexposure, backlight or side lighting, polarizer, all basic tools that you can bring that warmth of the season into your photographs. Hey, I want to thank my good friends at Bedford Camera, bedfords.com. I keep talking about these people every week, and you folks, every week I hear from you about how you've gone to Bedford, and you just can't believe that those people are there. Great service, great knowledge, great inventory, killer prices, home of the Moose discount. I want to thank you for reaching out and telling me your great experiences, because they are great folks. Now remember, PhotoCon is coming up this week. That's just a marvelous, another one of the many events that Bedford's is part of. And it's all about, hey, getting you familiar with techniques and tools and manufacturers and different products. So check out PhotoCon. Head to their website, bedfords.com. Maybe buy a few things. And remember to use that old Moose discount. Get that 5% off. Another thing I'm going to bring to your attention, I've mentioned it, it's a new app, or newish app. It just hit a 1-year anniversary. Any question, all one word, any question. This is a really unique concept, and they are bringing together, in many different disciplines, not just photography, experts or people who are willing to take their time to share what they've learned. What I kind of like to think of it rather than experts. I've been there for about a month, a little bit over. Believe it or not, I've almost 200 questions that I have answered on any question. Now, the answers are typically 30 seconds to a minute, not really very long, because some questions are, are simple yes or no kind of thing. But I haven't seen any familiar names on there, except for Anonymous, and I don't know who that is or she is, but I just wanted to bring it up. It's a great place to ask simple questions, complex questions, anything in between. And you're going to see my face on your iPhone or smart device answering those questions. So check it out, any question. Let me get right into this week's topic. Thrown into the deep end. Now, I kind of need to explain the background a little bit for this to totally make sense. But boy, a lot of photographers could really learn from what happened this past week. I just did our second annual Philmont Scout Ranch photography workshop. So it's down at the Philmont Ranch in New Mexico. And we're talking about a slice of heaven that is really, man, it is just amazing. It's the way it's been for hundreds of years. It's literally on the Santa Fe Trail and then going west up into the mountains. Just a heartbeat below Cimarron of famous Western songs and movies. It is a spectacular place. You look to the east, and you've got that incredible New Mexico landscape. The flat landscape with the great, gorgeous sunrises and heavenly bodies. It's so dark at night. And you look to the west, you've got peaks. You're going up to Baldy there, almost 12,000 feet. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous landscape. And the people in the class, the vast majority of them are scouters. They spend their time volunteering to help kids. And they are just a marvelous group. And Philmont is all about training. And then you've got the trek side. And the training is for the adults, more or less. There's always going to be, exceptions. And the treks, you can go and you can hike, anybody else would call it hiking, trek through this ranch, and they have an amazing program. And these guys have all been through that, as have I, a couple lifetimes ago. So fast forward now to what we've got going. We went this past week. We chose the dates looking for fall color, and we were just really rewarded. It was just some gorgeous, gorgeous colors. All aspens. It's spectacular, and it's nestled into a pine forest. You've got some really cool rock formations. You've got some history. You even have a T-Rex footprint in that's there. One of the two places in the North America you actually can see a T-Rex print, a fossilized print. Now we're going from about 6,000 to the highest was 10,000 feet. So we had lots of different opportunities, color and black and white. But the theme for the week, not much different than I did last year, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty similar to what we do next year, was not necessarily Philmont or not necessarily landscape, but light. Simple old light. Well, I call it simple. Some of my students might not think so much because we were talking, about the quality and the quantity of light for 5 days straight. Had two shoots each day, and then we're in the classroom a minimum of 2 hours each day. Sometimes it was five, and then a number of times we had evening shoots after dinner. We were going back out, be it for sunset or star trails or heavenly bodies. But the entire theme was light. Now, we had a variety of camera gear in the class. We had one who literally stopped at Bedford's as he drove to New Mexico and bought himself a Z9. And then we had some folks with some, you could say, pretty basic point and shoot cameras. We had one, he knows who he is. He calls himself Lefty now after Moose hanging on him for a whole week about proper hand holding, who had a camera with like a 50 to 600 built-in zoom thing. And so we had all sorts of camera gear. And what's the one thing we all have in common? Every one of those photographers in there, well, we have this a passion for scouting. We have a passion for Philmont and the landscape and for conservation and for storytelling. Now, the word photograph, go to kind of its basic roots, it means write with light. That means you are writing a story with light. So that's why the class was focused on light. Now, you might be wondering what I'm talking about when it comes to thrown into the deep end. Now, photography, as you are very well aware, can be really, convoluted and very complicated. And if you listen to the Moose podcast much, I kind of break it down into simple terms. One, because that's what my brain can relate to. Yeah, I do understand some of the science. I have gone through those classes. I've talked to the experts, and I try to simulate that as best I can for myself and for you. But for these folks, their emphasis is not hardcore photography. They're not out every day or every weekend. It is, I'm not going to say it's a hobby because they all take it very seriously. They want to do their best at it to tell a story. They're very fortunate to be out and see things that even I haven't seen, and to share them, they need the pictures. But we all have that thing called light in common. But thinking about light, let alone actually digesting and put it into a photograph, that's a whole new scenario. We have this incredible receptor system, our eyes and our mind, and the way it plugs in and sees the world and informs us of everything we see, we take for granted because it works, right? We can see information in the highlights. We can see information in the shadows. We don't have to, pull on our nose or yank our ears to change the white balance. Our vision does it for us. Well, that cold-hearted bastard, that thing I affectionately call our cameras, it's ones and zeros. We have to, even though it does a great job, we have to insert ourselves, especially our passion when it comes to light. That's what these guys are having to do. So we had many discussions about white balance. And I have no doubt that 99.9% of them are still have their heads spinning just about white balance. And we talked about range of light. 5 stops where the camera can very easily capture all the detail and the highlights and the shadows, to the fact that our vision, 14 stops. There's a big void there, and bringing that together from what we see to what the camera can capture and bring back, that's a bit of a challenge. And then we have the quality, right? So we've been talking about quantity, both as far as light value and color, but there's the quality, and that's where I threw these poor folks into the deep end. And since they are scouters, they've gone through, most of them have gone through things like Wood Badge, which if you're not into scouting, it's really, it's a leadership training course to not make leaders, but help leaders make other leaders. And that's kind of a lot how this training is done in scouting. Once you start getting past into that side of the program, which I was very fortunate. I had a father who did it and got me into it when I was a kid, and it's very much a part of who I am and how I teach. So for these folks, some of the concepts might have been a challenge, but the methodology in which I was providing them the information and bringing them along for 5 days made perfect sense to them. And besides, they had done it elsewhere. So when I threw them in the deep end, they just went for it. They didn't care about life preservers or a lifeguard. They just went for it. And so how did I do that? Well, when it comes to light and photography, one of the most trickiest, difficult, time-consuming, frustrating light aspects of photography is flash. Flash is, for me, when I started out, it was a horrible relationship. I cursed it, I moaned it. It was not, unless I could cause a fire with it, I didn't understand what light was, that flash was good for. And then after doing it for quite a while, it clicked. Now, the first thing about flash is you have to understand is, what is it doing for you photographically? And it's going to be filling in information. Bottom line, it could be either A, exposure, when it's bringing up perhaps shadow detail, or it's perhaps going to light a subject, which we talked about a lot, lighting a subject in real time versus in post. There is a vast difference. It can be done, but it's not the same, because then we get into that quality. And then, from the video I posted about a month ago, I use flash a lot for color. But these guys, I just wanted them to start understanding just basic light, range of light. So I first did a basic kind of demo, and I took 6 shots, everything from front lit, side lit, and then backlit. And all those was just strictly using the ambient light. No flash was brought into the photograph. Then with that backlit subject, and with the sun in the frames, and closing the lens down all the way at the f/22, and I was not doing my model, who is such a good spirit, and I appreciate him. He thinks I'm hard on him, but he doesn't realize how much I appreciate him, not just being in the class, but all that he does for society in the biggest and smallest way. I wasn't really kind to him because I used the 14-24 and on the wider end, and so his nose kind of grew a little bit up until the very last picture. So the first picture, he was backlit, no light. Second picture, he was still backlit with just the bare flash using the ProPhoto A10. And it's a really gorgeous light to start with, but then I put on the Octa that ProPhoto makes for the A10, which I'm going to do a whole video on that thing. That thing is a brilliant system. Oh, and the quality of the light coming from that A10 through their Octa. And that was my final photograph. So they saw me do it in the field and took about, even with all my explanations and walking around and showing them the back of the camera for a couple shots, maybe 10 minutes. So they saw how quickly I did it, and they saw the final results in the field. And then we went back to the classroom where I walk through the various photographs from the front lit to the backlit to the backlit with the pro photo through the octa. And they could see, and that was the important part, they could visually see, okay, the changes in the light. Most importantly, they saw how in my model, we were bringing out his particular very unique character. He has this really cool, great beard, got great texture and shape and that grizzled kind of mountain man gray look to it. It's a really great beard. And that's partly why I wanted to use him because you know, seeing the eyes and the nose and wrinkles on the face that, you know, age brings and that character, it's to me accented really nicely with that beard. Now, here's how I threw these poor folks who were just, they were great. They just went for it. I threw them in the deep end because I made them, I made them partner up and go out and do this with their partner. And this being going out and taking shots of them front lit, side lit, backlit, and then with flash. And I put in the caveats that you had to have a background that was pretty clean. Now, I wasn't going to be the most perfect background because of where we were and that darn thing called a clock. You know, that clock is ticking. And so it would take them 15, 20 minutes just to walk to where they could shoot because they had to shoot with a wide angle lens, you know, nothing more than 50 millimeter. But to go out and make a clean background shot, and they had to, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they had to control the exposure in the background. So I showed them when I went backlighting how I dialed in -2 in this scenario into the camera. So the ambient light was being underexposed and the flash was technically becoming the main light. So this was point blank a very difficult assignment to do. I mean, you had to turn your flash on, and some of them hadn't done that before. You had to make the camera and the flash talk to each other, which means you had to use high speed sync. You had to grasp, and this was difficult, and it's difficult for everybody, grasp the fact that in aperture priority, the camera's exposure comp is going to deal with the ambient light, and the cameras and the aperture is going to deal with the flash exposure. So some people had to figure out how to get their camera into high speed sync because we had shutter speed for most was about 800 to 1200 of a second. It was pretty crank up there. So some people learned how to lower their ISO so their shutter speed wasn't going wonkers. Some people had to learn how to actually get the flash to talk to the camera because you could not have, couldn't have the flash in the hot shoe. And then being that scout environment, you had everybody helping each other. So in the end, even though I kind of paired people up in pairs, there was some groups of 3 that they worked together so they could share their TTL cable or they could share a flash. And then I sent Sharon, I was with the iPhone, I took a pano so you could see everybody, you know, broken up. And the thing the pano didn't share was all the laughter going on. I mean, these guys are and gals are having a great time, truly failing and flailing in this process of learning light and flash and the position of light and background control, all of that. Now, they were totally thrown into the deep end here. They were provided no information before they came to the class that they were going to do this. They didn't know that they're going to use a flash in this way. They didn't know they're going to have to learn high speed sync. They didn't know they're going to have to learn the basics of flash principle. And more importantly, they didn't know they were going to have to model, right? I mean, I hate being on that side of the camera and it pointed at me. So these folks had to do all that and learn the lesson. In photography terms, that is thrown into the deep end without a life preserver and with a rock tied to your foot. And they all came out swimmingly. The laughter itself was an indicator that we were making progress. And the key to me, you know, the class was filled. There was, you know, it was a full workshop again. So I thank you guys for that. But the key here is that many of them said, "Wow, I didn't know I could do that." Or, "I didn't know I had that power with the flash." And a number of them, this is the thing that really made me the happiest, was they said, and out loud, "I didn't know that flash was that simple. I'm not afraid of the flash anymore. I'm gonna go back and work on this." Now, how many of you out there, um, show of hands, have a flash and never use it? That's about the number I figured. Show of hands again, how many of you have a flash and are scared to death of it? Yeah. Okay, so that's even more hands. So, that doesn't surprise me either. How many consider flash a friend and use it whenever it's needed? Yeah, not so many hands. So these folks, God bless them, they trusted me enough just to jump in the deep end, and they came out understanding light a little bit better. And that's really the important part of photography. You get out there shooting, you got to realize that you got to embrace failure. It's going to happen. You have to understand you don't know everything. You have to understand that you have probably learned some things the most complicated way, and that's a road barrier as well. But I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, any of you can do it. And since I saw these marvelous people at this workshop at Philmont do it, I know everybody can do it. So don't be afraid with both feet to get thrown in the deep end. You guys have a great week, and remember to make every click your story.